Gentlemen, in our last recording in this series, which we called Value Wise or Dollar Foolish, we studied the practical use of the three-column value analysis chart in professional salesmanship. Now today we are going to go one step further and expand the subject material from the three-column to the five-column comparative analysis. In this conference session, we plan to discuss ways and means to professionally neutralize as much as possible the prospect's interest in a competitive product, service, or ideal. Now, I would like to say in the beginning that comparative analysis within itself is not really new. Well, as a matter of fact, few things in this commercial world are. However, it may be the first time that you've had the opportunity to see and to study a full presentation on the subject. Now, we will try to present the material in such a way as to make it easy to understand and clear enough to apply its principles to your own selling profile and image. As you well know, we are in an age of saturation advertising, and seldom do we find a prospect for our product, service, or idea that has not been exposed to our competition to some degree, and is by nature and promotion an astute comparative shopper. Magazines are published to inform the public of comparative values in merchandise. Books have been written on how to shop for better bargains. And many of us ourselves study advertising material for better values and then travel many miles to save a dollar. This is the American way of buying. Now, since we recognize that our job as salespeople includes that of selling our products up, and when necessary, to sell through but not down our competitors' commodity, it seems wise and reasonable that we should understand the fine art of comparative salesmanship and make its practices an integral part of our money-making efforts. As in the last recording, I would like to suggest that you follow along with us using a pencil and a full-size sheet of paper or chalkboard if one is available. This is important because this is training in a rather advanced stage, and some extra effort on your part will make the context easier to understand and more readily digested for your future use. Now, I have here in my offices today one of the really successful marketing men in our city. He participated with us in our last conference and assisted us in making the value-wise or dollar-foolish recording. His name is Bob Carrington. Bob, welcome to the meeting. It's awfully good to have you back with us to explore in greater detail one of the very interesting facets of the science of cybernetics.
Well, thank you, Heartsill. It's my pleasure to join you in this comparative analysis session. Because, as I told you a number of times already, I found this information to be very important in my own selling experience. My only regret is not having been fortunate in having the opportunity to be exposed to this type of instruction years ago. I'm sure that I'd be a better salesman today had this information been available to me sooner. Well, Heartsill, though, the important thing is, where do we start today?
Well, Bob, I think that it would be wise to take just a brief moment or two and quickly review the preceding record's key information as a foundation of our thoughts for today. Then we will move rapidly into comparative salesmanship. Would you like to bring our audience up to date and review what has preceded us up to this point in our discussion?
Yes, Heartsill, I'd like to do that. Gentlemen, in our last recording in this series, we looked at the practical use of the three-column value analysis chart that helps us to put value into our product, service, or idea. Those that were with us on the last record will remember that we determined, with the help of some of the country's top psychologists, that man has three primary motivational factors. One, most of his decisions are made for personal gain. Gain in values that he can see and understand. The second most important motivational factor is the fear of loss. Actions taken to preserve and to protect that which he has already acquired. And thirdly, every person in some degree wants to be recognized as a person of worth. This is our vanity at work. These are decisions that are made to satisfy our ego, to improve our image in someone else's eyes. Heartsill, I'm more and more convinced that the practical use of these factors in every presentation is the primary difference between success and mediocrity.
Bob, you and I know that it works because we have made it work before. But I'd like to add this to your statement for a moment.
Right.
Few shoppers will, on their own volition, tell you what is uppermost in their minds, or what motivational factor will cause him to make a decision for you.
That's for sure.
Therefore, Bob, it is imperative that we probe for information that will help us. So we begin by asking questions, low-key personal questions about our prospect's job, perhaps about his home or his children, his church or his recreation, but on any subject that will cause him to open up and loosen up and talk to us. Never forget this. that he or she is the only person that really knows what it will take to make that decision for us. And unless we tactfully get him to talk about his needs and desires, it is altogether possible that we might miss the target completely or have to spend precious minutes or hours in retreading our presentation after a false start. Now, Bob, would you be kind enough to briefly describe the worksheet that we used in our last recording, and then we will move along into the discussion of the 5-column comparative analysis and see how to sell through our competition's product, service, or idea.
I'd be glad to, Heartsill. Here's what we did. We took a sheet of paper and divided it into 3 full columns with a heading space at the top of each column. Above column number 1, we wrote the words needs and desires, which are his motivational factors. At the top of column 2, we wrote the word values. These are the advantages of our PSI in his eyes. And at the top of column 3, we wrote product, service, or idea. Under this heading, we listed all of the features of our PSI that we were going to build in value to satisfy his needs or desires.
Right, Bob, and then we chose several optional extra cost features of an automobile for our PSI. Features like power steering, tinted glass, optional high-performance power plant, and power steering. Then in column 2, under values, we determined what the values of each feature really was through the prospect's eyes. For power steering, we determined that some of these values were ease of handling in city traffic, parking ease downtown, and less fatigue on long trips. Then we related this information to his needs and desires in column 1. These needs and desires were, first of all, that he tires easily on long drives. Secondly, that his wife has trouble in parallel parking at the grocery store while shopping. If you cannot recall all of the details of that analysis chart, it probably would pay some dividends by going back now and replaying the record as a review for you.
But the tricky part of this entire process, Heartsill, was the proper way to express these values to our prospects. Frankly, it wasn't easy for me to do on the first 3 or 4 tries, but I know from my own experience that it is a profit producer. Frankly, for the greater part of my selling experience, I've been a feature teller. By that I mean that I rattled off the product features one at a time as I thought about them, without taking the time to relate and to emphasize these features in the terms of values from the prospect's viewpoint. Believe me, I've been pretty lucky, I guess, because I'm afraid that more people have bought from me in the past than I've been guilty of selling. I'm living proof that value salesmanship will work. It has done a great job for me in the past 3 weeks. Listen closely to the proper sequence for use in value salesmanship, and I'm sure it'll help you. First, start off by making a statement about his needs or desires, because if he has neither, you have nothing to sell. If he has one or the other, remind him of it at every appropriate moment. 2, then follow with the values in column 2, as they relate to his needs and desires, being careful to explain in more detail any value that he might question or doubt. 3, end your statement with the feature, but always precede the feature with sufficient values to make it completely desirable on the prospect's part. It makes for very good selling. Now, Heartsill, let's move to the comparative analysis. Where do we start there?
First of all, let's get that fresh sheet of paper out and draw not 3, but 5 vertical columns on this sheet this time, leaving column or heading space at the top and plenty of writing space below the heading. Now at the top of column 1, write the words needs and desires, just as we did on the last record. At the top of column 2, write values. Then at the top of 3, write product, service, or idea. This is our PSI for this sale. Now this will leave you 2 extra columns open, number 4 and number 5. And at the top of number 4, write the words alternate choice. Alternate choice. And at the top of number 5, write the word loss. Now this gives us a 5-column analysis sheet that we will use in comparative salesmanship. Now in the last record, Bob, we used an automotive example, although you personally happen to be a real estate salesman. I'd like to ask you a question. Did you find it difficult to follow the methods of value salesmanship as a result of working with a strange PSI?
Well, Heartsill, as a matter of fact, I thought it was better that way. I was interested in the method of the process, not the details of the product. By using another line of merchandise, I feel that I was more objective in my thinking about the method. And that's the real secret in learning. Once you've mastered the method, you're well equipped to sell any commodity to anybody.
Well, with that thought in mind, then, let's use your product in this recording as opposed to rehashing the car example.
Fine.
Let's use a real estate example to teach method to those people that are listening. If it was beneficial to you, I am sure that it'll also help our friends better understand the reasons behind competitive salesmanship.
Good idea.
So why don't you pick up the piece of paper there, if you will, and look over in the classified section and see what you can find there that we can use as an item to be sold in our 5-column comparative analysis. Do you find one that makes any sense at all?
Well, let's see, Heartsill. Let's find out what's on the market. Help wanted.
And mobile homes, that's what
Machinery and tools. A better business property for sale or lease.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Would you like to read the ad on it?
Right. Let's see, here's one. For sale or lease. Modern brick building, 32,000 square feet, located on the John Lodge Expressway, immediate occupancy, wired for heavy-duty electrical service, large hardtop parking and storage lot, partially air-conditioned, reasonably priced, terms if you desire to purchase, and the telephone number VA4-4787. Heartsill, I know that particular piece of property, and it's an ideal example for us to use. Now give me some information about my prospect. What have I learned about him at this point of our conversation?
Well, first of all, Bob, his name is Campbell. He owns a potato chip manufacturing company in St. Louis, and he wants to open a division here in Detroit. The quicker he can open, the better, because the best season for potato chips is only a couple of months away. He is adequately financed and is presently considering the advisability of building a warehouse and distribution center in suburban Romulus. Now, you know that this is about 26 miles out of downtown Detroit. Now, Bob, your job is to get him interested in buying your listing of the business property downtown as opposed to building at Romulus. Do you think that you can handle this for him all right?
Well, if you'll forgive my saying so, Heartsill, I can do it much better than I could sell power steering 3 weeks ago.
Touché.
Well, let's start with first things first. Let's list all of the features that the ad mentions in column 3 on our chart under the heading Product, Service, or Idea. These features are A, near the expressway and immediate availability for occupancy. B, it's already wired for heavy-duty electrical service. C, has excellent parking and storage facilities. D, it's partially air-conditioned. And E, easy financing if desired. These are our PSIs.
Well, Bob, it's obvious that we will not be able to have the time here to digest or process all of these features on this record, so let's just choose the first feature to work with, near the expressway and immediately available for occupancy. Now, this will become the foundation for our study. And at the conclusion, those listeners that are interested can complete the chart in their spare time for better personal application. Now, while you are sharpening your wits, Bob, we'll ask our friends in the audience to flip the record over to side 2, where you and I can go to work on the 5-column comparative analysis. Gentlemen, if you please.